I've got no idea. I'm not very tech myself. So.
Don't tell anybody else that, yeah? No, I think it's probably just heard you at the mic. Yeah, خلاص. Yeah, we're good.
Recording?
Yeah, recording. I'll keep an eye out on that.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله تعالى وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. الحمد لله. Last week we looked at the 6 obligations of wudu in the Shafi'i school. Who can remember some of the obligations of wudu with the Shafi'is? The first one is the intention. It's the right, yeah, but so the order, yeah, that's the last one. Washing the face is the second one. It's the third. Wiping the head is the fourth. Washing the feet to the ankles is the fifth, and then the routine is the sixth. And we mentioned many sunan, recommended acts as well. We said that if one omits any of the 6 obligations with the Shafi'is, your wudu would be invalid. So if you prayed having missed an obligation, you have to repeat the prayer because your wudu would be invalid. We mentioned with the Hanafi school, Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, may Allah reward him and all the Imams, with the Hanafi school, there are 4 obligations. Washing the face, washing the arms, wiping a quarter of the head, and washing the feet. So there's no order and no intention with the Hanafis. We mentioned one exception, so the intention. We mentioned the intention. What's the intention we can make when making wudu? What intention do we have to make? So we can say, I intend to make wudu as we're washing the face. Or we can say, when I say, I mean intend in the heart. We intend in the heart, I intend to lift the state of ritual impurity. Or I intend to purify myself to pray. Any of those intentions would suffice. So you're going to make wudu, I intend to make wudu as you're washing the face, that would suffice for the intention. The one exception we mentioned for the intention is someone who is, in Arabic, what we say, da'im al-hadath. Okay, da'im al-hadath, the one who's always in a state of ritual impurity. So someone's unwell, they can't stop intermittent drops of urine from coming from their private area. Or a woman with chronic vaginal discharge, blood is always leaving from that area. That would invalidate one's wudu. Imagine urine's always leaving, a sickness. They can't stop urine leaving their private area. So as soon as they make wudu, they lose their wudu. They make wudu, they lose their wudu. So for that person, we said they make a different intention. They intend to permit themselves to pray the fard prayer when making wudu, and then they can go and pray. They can't make the normal intention, that wouldn't suffice for that person. If there's any questions at any point, please raise your hand or raise your voice.
We were taught in the Hanafi madhab that your intention suffices for that wudu until the next prayer comes. So let's say someone made wudu for Dhuhr. He can do Dhuhr, he can read Quran, he can do all the things that requires wudu until Asr. And then at Asr time he has to renew his wudu again.
That's correct. Same with the Shafi'is. Exactly, yeah. So someone they make the intention. They can pray one fard prayer, right? They intend to permit themselves to pray the fard prayer because they're always urinating, right? Always passing wind, or blood's always leaving for a woman. They intend to permit themselves to pray the fard prayer. They pray one fard prayer. They can read Quran. They can pray Sunnah. They can carry the Quran. And then when Asr comes, they make wudu again. And they make the intention again and clean themselves again. Today's lesson will cover 2 things. The first is how does one enter into a state of major ritual impurity? And how do you clean yourself from that? And then we'll look at the invalidators of wudu. Okay, so if one is what we say janaba in the Arabic language, what does it mean to be on janaba? On janaba? Impurity. So major ritual impurity. right? So for example, someone meets with their wife, okay, they meet with their wife, or a woman finishes her menstrual cycle, or childbirth likewise, death for the person who dies. And sorry, there are young people here, but we have to mention certain sensitive things. If sperm leaves the private area for a man, likewise, all those things cause one to enter into a state of major ritual impurity. Like someone meets with their wife, okay, they have to go and make ghusl. A woman finishes her cycle, she has to go and make ghusl. A woman gives birth, she has to go and make ghusl. A young boy has a wet dream, for example. He wakes up, or a man, but for a young boy has a wet dream. He's 15, 16, maybe younger. He has a wet dream. He wakes up, he sees a patch of wetness on his trousers. He has to go and make ghusl. Why? Because he's now entered into a state of janaba. Okay, the word janaba linguistically means to be distant. Okay, the junub is one who's distant, and they say that the link between that and the technical term of being in a state of major ritual impurity is the one who's on janaba is distant from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when someone meets with their wife or they have a wet dream, it's recommended to make ghusl before you sleep, or before you eat or drink. Recommended. Not obligatory, but it's best to do so. It's best to do so because they say the angels won't enter a home. They won't enter a home with a person who's junub in that home. So they are the reasons which cause one to enter into a state of major ritual impurity.
But Rasulullah has permitted for a Islamic person to just wash his private parts and remain in wudu until the morning, and then to take a bath.
Beautiful, Dr. Sufi, beautiful. Okay, so the best thing to do, if you meet your wife, for example, is to make ghusl. That's the best thing. As Dr. Sufi mentioned, if one doesn't want to do that, or they can't do it for whatever reason, okay, then what they should do is they wash their private area, okay, they wash their private area and they make wudu. And then they can sleep, and then they can make ghusl in the morning. That's not obligatory, but it's recommended to do so, because they say that lessens the state of impurity. It lessens the state. So if you can't make ghusl, or you don't want to, for whatever reason, you wash your private area and then you make wudu. And if you eat, drink or sleep after that, it's no longer disliked. Okay, so if you meet your wife or you have a wet dream, it's disliked to go and eat and drink before you, as a minimum, you make wudu and clean your private area. So those are the reasons which can cause one to enter into a state of major ritual impurity. Okay, now what does one have to do? Okay, the minimum, one has to lift the state of ritual impurity, of major ritual impurity. They've met with their wife, they had a wet dream. Okay, they now have to enter into a state of purity again, return to that state of purity. They have to wash. The first thing they do is they make an intention with the Shafi'is. They make an intention to lift the state of major ritual impurity. Okay, so they go into the shower, or they have the bucket, or however they're washing. The first thing they do in their heart, they make an intention. I intend to lift the state of major ritual impurity, or I intend to purify myself for prayer. That would suffice. Okay, so they make that intention in their heart, and the intention should be present when they start washing themselves. Very easy. They make the intention in their heart. I intend to lift the state of major ritual impurity in their heart, and they start washing themselves. Okay, so the first obligation is what? The intention. The second is encompassing the whole body in water. Okay, so it's not enough, for example, just to have a quick rinse and hope water's reached your whole body. Okay, one has to be sure that water's reached every part of it. Not absolutely certain, because that would be difficult unless you had no clothes on, you jumped into like a swimming pool, right? But you have to be sure, okay, you have to be confident water has reached your whole body. Every hair, if you have long hair, if you have a long beard. So we said when making wudu, for example, if you have a thick beard, right, that you can't see the skin of someone, if you're sitting close to them, you can't see the skin, that's a thick beard, right? So this part of my beard is thick because you can't see the skin if you're sitting close. In wudu, it's enough to wipe over that. Let water just run over it. You don't have to make sure water gets inside when making wudu, if you have a thick beard. If you have a thin beard where you can see the skin, for example, you can see the skin of someone, that's a thin beard. You have to make sure water reaches underneath your thin beard. But in ghusl, the dispensation is not there for the thick beard, which means when you're making ghusl, you have to make sure water reaches even underneath the skin, underneath the hair to the skin of a thick beard. Okay, so when making ghusl, you have to make sure water reaches the whole body, every hair, and every bit of skin and every hair. So they are the two obligations of ghusl: the intention and encompassing the whole body in water.
Nostril and mouth.
So with the Hanafis, that's rinsing the mouth and nostrils with the Hanafis is wajib. So with the Shafi'is, that's sunnah, that's recommended. Recommended to do so. Then there are some recommended acts when making ghusl. You should start with your head. Okay, you should wash your right side before your left. You should do all of the sunan of wudu. You should do for ghusl. Okay, facing the qibla if you can, using minimal water if you can, not wasting water, and the like. So we mentioned that. So the leaving of sperm, for example, that could be from meeting your wife, it could be from a wet dream, it could be from thinking, it could be from masturbation, which is impermissible. It's haram to pleasure oneself with their hand, but if one did do that, they would still have to make ghusl. They couldn't say, oh, because it's haram. No, they have to make ghusl. If they masturbate and sperm was to leave their private area, they have to make ghusl. It would be obligatory to do that. And obviously repent for that sin, for the sin. And then we have the invalidators of wudu. Okay, the invalidators of wudu. So what we mentioned now, what we just mentioned, are the things that cause you to enter into a state of major ritual impurity. Okay. Now we're going to mention 4 things in the Shafi'i school which cause you to enter into a state of minor ritual impurity. What does that mean? It means you have to make wudu and not ghusl. Okay, wudu and not ghusl. So the first thing is anything that leaves the private area. Okay, so someone just prayed Dhuhr, right? They went home, they had lunch, and then they went to use the bathroom. Okay, whether it's from the front or the back, whatever came out would mean they've now entered into a state of minor ritual impurity. What does that mean? It means if they wanted to carry the Quran again, if they wanted to pray again, they would have to make wudu again. So the first thing is anything that leaves from the private area, whether that's urine, feces, whether it's blood, or stones or worms or anything that leaves from that area, whatever it is, that would invalidate your wudu. The only exception in the Shafi'i school is if sperm leaves the private area, it doesn't break your wudu because it means you have to make ghusl. It's a small technicality. Because in reality you still can't pray anyway, but the scholars will say that sperm leaving doesn't break your wudu, but it means you have to make ghusl. Okay, so the first thing we said is anything that leaves the private area, means you have to make wudu, even if it's wind. Okay, even if it's wind. So for example, someone's praying, you're praying, and they're sure they pass wind. 100%, I know that I passed wind, your wudu is now invalid. Okay, it's obligatory to stop praying and to leave the jama'ah. You can't continue praying. That's a major sin to continue praying when you don't have wudu. If you pass wind and you're praying, you have to leave the prayer and go make your wudu again and pray again. Now there's an important point to mention here is that all of the invalidators have to happen. You have to be certain. Okay? What does that mean? It means, let's say you're praying and you think you feel something. Did I pass wind or not? You're not sure. You don't leave the prayer. Why? Because shaitan plays with people. Right? So shaitan go, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, did I break wudu? Did I lose my wudu? No. In that case, if you hear it, right, so if you're not sure, and you don't hear it, and you don't smell it, you stay in prayer. Why? Because the shaitan is whispering. But that's different because you may not hear it or smell it, but you can still be certain. Okay, so if you're praying and you 100% felt something leave, right, you definitely passed wind, you can't then say, oh, I didn't smell it or hear it. No. That's only if you're doubtful whether something left. And they shouldn't be conflated. They're two different things. So all of the invalidators have to happen through, you have to be certain. It's not, oh, I think I passed wind, I think this, I think that. So for example, someone leaves the bathroom. So they've urinated, okay, they've cleaned the area, and then they go up to make wudu. Oh my gosh, did some more urine come out? Oh my gosh, I'm not sure. Oh my gosh, the area's wet anyway because it's like, I just made istinja. If you're 100% sure, you have to clean yourself. If you think, maybe I felt something, no. You don't go back and clean yourself. Why? Because that's shaitan. That to the extent that ulama would say, right, if you're using the bathroom and you make istinja, it's recommended to actually get some water and splash it on the area to make it wet. So even if you feel something, you can say to yourself, oh, it's just the water I splashed, just to make sure. And that's the extent the scholars will go to distance you from becoming susceptible to the whispers of shaitan. That's the first thing, okay? Anything leaves the private area. The second thing is losing one's intellect as a result of sleep, unconsciousness, or intoxication, or anything else that would cause one to lose their intellect. Okay, so you fall asleep in the mosque lying down, at home lying down, anywhere you fall asleep, with certainty, when you wake up, you have to make a ghusl, right? The Prophet ﷺ was sleeping one day. Wudu. Sorry, wudu. Thank you. Not ghusl, not ghusl. Right, so you fall asleep, lying down, you wake up, you have to make wudu. The Prophet ﷺ was sleeping one day, lying down. And then he woke up and he went to pray. Allahu Akbar. Aisha radiallahu anha said, Ya Rasulullah, like, did you not teach us we had to make wudu if we slept? He said, the prophets, our eyes sleep but our hearts don't sleep. Meaning what? He didn't lose his intellect, he was still aware of what he was doing. So if he'd passed wind, for example, or anything had happened, he would know, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he didn't do that and he woke up and he prayed straight away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's exclusive for the prophets. Someone can't say, oh, my heart doesn't sleep. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so falling asleep, lying down. Why do we say lying down? Because if you fall asleep firmly seated, right now I'm firmly seated. Okay, I'm firmly seated. If I fall asleep like this, most people are firmly seated here. If I fall asleep like this, right, and I wake up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, doesn't matter how long. If I fall asleep like this and I wake up, I still have wudu. Why? Because if wind, if you were to pass wind, you'd feel it and you'd wake up. Now, to fall asleep like that is likewise okay with the Shafi'is. You can fall asleep leaning on something. So you're on the bus, you fall asleep on the train, you're at work on the laptop or on a computer, right? You fall asleep sitting down, even if you're leaning on something. In the Shafi'i school, that's fine. That's fine. With the Hanafis, I think. Yeah. So with the Hanafis, if you're leaning on something and you fall asleep, then it breaks your wudu. The Malikis went even further, and they said, imagine I was holding like a subha. I don't have one, but I've got my keys. Imagine I was holding a subha, right? And I was making tasbih, and if I fell asleep, if it dropped, my wudu's gone. Even if you're sitting down firmly, not leaning on something. So the Malikis in that example are the strictest. And we said every Imam has areas where he's stricter and areas where he's more, it seems more lenient, exactly, yeah, seems more lenient. And all the Imams he's read are correct, may Allah be pleased with every single one of them. Okay, so falling asleep, sitting down, does not break your wudu, provided you're firmly seated. Provided you wake up in the same position. You can't fall asleep sitting down and then wake up lying down and say, I fell asleep sitting down. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to wake up in the same position. Obviously, if your arms moved or your head's moved, that's okay. But if this area has moved, such it's no longer firmly seated, meaning what? If wind was to pass through, you wouldn't feel it. Okay, you wouldn't feel it. Again, you have to be certain you slept. Okay, so let's say you're lying down at home, watching something or reading something, and you're in Arabic they say yanas, he's drowsy, right? You're lying down, you're like that. That's called nu'as, right? Drowsiness. If you're lying down like that, that does not break your wudu. Why? Because you haven't slept yet. You have to be certain you fell asleep. So if you're in the mosque in Ramadan, right, just before Taraweeh, and you're drowsing, you're like that, and you wake up, oh my gosh, or you become alert, did I fall asleep? If there's any shak, you still have wudu. If there's any doubt, you still have wudu. Why? Because you're not certain you fell asleep. Right? You have to go with your certainty. You're certain you made wudu, and now you're doubtful you lost it by being drowsy. Marhaba.
Even sometimes, I mean, as we get older, we sometimes go into a state of what we call somnolence, which is you're sitting down, watching television, especially if you're interested in something, and then you kind of, go, you lose it for a second or few seconds, and then you wake up, but you haven't moved. But is that breaks your wudu?
Well, if you were sitting down firmly, it wouldn't break your wudu even if you slept for 10 minutes.
Yeah, because a lot of elderly people,
Yeah.
they tend to do that. I do it myself. I know because I know people around me when I speak to people, family, and all that. There is a tendency for when people to sit quietly, they go into this little momentary.
Well, if they're sleeping, it's fine anyway. If they're sitting firmly, it's fine anyway. But the thing is, if I said to you, if I asked anyone, did you sleep? Are you sure you fell asleep? Everyone knows what it feels like to fall asleep and to wake up. But if there's doubt, did I sleep or not, then you still have wudu.
There's
That's
also something else called narcolepsy when people who are a bit, usually people who are obese and all that, they talk to you and you just go off, but then they come back. But it's a physical condition rather than people falling asleep.
yeah, obviously.
That is what he has already said, isn't it? If a person is firmly seated and he has not moved, even if he falls asleep 5 minutes, the wudu hasn't gone. But it's when wudu is gone. And the Malikis is even tougher.
But even if that's a medical condition that somebody.
Yeah, the thing is, the fuqaha are obviously masters of jurisprudence, not of medicine. So they give certain parameters, and they try to simplify it. If you're certain you've fallen asleep, and you're not firmly seated, your wudu is broken, whether it's your condition or not. Right? If you've slept and you're not firmly seated, your wudu is gone. If you are firmly seated, then you're okay. But the thing is, if you're unsure, then you haven't lost your wudu, even if you're lying down. Because
on the medical side, I'm just saying, I give an example. Someone cannot hold wind for an hour, but he can hold wind for half an hour. This person will not fall in that category of persistently without wudu. So this person passes wind after making wudu, he has prayed his prayer and lost wudu. He cannot say, I've got a medical condition.
Exactly.
I cannot hold my wudu for long. My wudu is valid. No, his wudu is invalid now because he lost his wudu. He just passed wind.
Yeah.
He can hold it for half an hour.
Yeah.
That ruling is only valid for the person who cannot.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because when we say da'im al-hadath, the one who can't keep wudu, it means that not enough time passes between making wudu and praying, save they've passed wind or urinated. Which means, as Dr. Sufi mentioned, even if it's 10 minutes, every 10 minutes I have to pass wind, for example. That's enough time to use the bathroom, or let's say 13 minutes, use the bathroom, right? Clean yourself and pray. That's enough time. So you're not da'im al-hadath, you're not always in a state of mission impurity, because you have enough time.
And for those people who suffer from prostate problem, and they can't hold the urine, and they have to hold napkins.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example of someone we're talking about. If that person, for example, gauge the average time it takes to use the bathroom, clean yourself, right? Make wudu and pray. Let's say, 12 minutes, whatever it is. Not rushing, but not taking too long, right? Let's say that's 12 minutes, for example. That person who has prostate, if they say every 20 minutes guaranteed, right? Every 20 minutes, I always pass urine.
No, they're not aware of it because it's just.
Yeah. Okay.
Leak, you see?
Okay, but so how? Let me ask you a question. How often are they passing urine?
They are not aware.
So
Yeah.
what I do, so this is because of medical conditions, so let me tell this to what I do. I tell the brothers that put a tissue there, which I must have done. If your tissue becomes wet, you know that you have passed urine.
Yeah.
And what Jamal is saying, if you are not aware and you know that your urine is passing without you being aware every 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, then he has already said what the ruling is.
Yeah.
But if he puts the tissue in and he knows that the tissue is dry for 20 minutes, he knows he has got enough time. So then he should follow the rules.
Yeah, exactly. So he can try. He can one day after Dhuhr he can try. He said, I'm going to use the bathroom right now. I'm going to see. I'm going to put some tissue there, as Dr. Sufi mentioned. I'm going to go and have lunch. If after 5 minutes he checks and there's urine there, then he knows he's da'im al-hadath.
But if these people are in the market, you come to Dubai, there's a big place and you're in front there. You know, these elderly people will take a long time to go out there, and they do wear something to protect.
That person will be excused. They'll be excused.
It's not an excuse.
No, they are excused if they can't hold their.
There will be. I imagine if you go in the Kaaba, for example, you have this condition, and you know, in Makkah, it takes you but 15 minutes to go and find the toilet.
Yeah. No, that person would be excused. If they can't hold their wudu, they'd be excused. No.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. So being firmly seated does not break your wudu. There are a few exceptions. If someone is extremely obese or very, very skinny, they don't have that dispensation. So if someone's extremely obese, if they fall asleep sitting firmly seated, we say you're not excused, or you have to make wudu, because if something passed, they wouldn't feel it. Or really, really skinny, that person would have to make their wudu. They couldn't say I'm firmly seated, because if they pass wind, they may not feel it. That's the second invalidator of wudu. The third invalidator is touching the private area with the palm of your hands. We say private area, we mean the front and the back, right? And it's the actual. Sorry to be explicit, but it's the penis, and not the scrotum, and it will be the anus for the rear. So not the buttock exactly. So if someone, what's the palm of the hand? Anything you can't see is the palm. Okay? Anything you can see is not the palm. What does that mean? It means that, let's say for example, right, someone touches their private area, right? Anything on here, that breaks your wudu. Why? Because it's the palm. Someone touched their private area with the back, does not break your wudu. Or the sides, does not break your wudu. Or the tips, does not break your wudu. Okay, when we say touching the private area, we mean anything you can't see now is the palm. Anything you can't see that touched the penis would break your wudu. And with the thumbs, it's like that. So you're getting dressed, for example. What was it? Was it my palm? If there's any doubt, you still have wudu. Don't let shaitan play with you. If you're 100% sure you touched with the palm, this breaks your wudu. And that's with the Shafi'is, not with the Hanafis, right?
It is.
It is. Okay, I didn't know that.
So the Hanafis is also the same. That if it is like, because sometimes shaitan plays with you. You have done ghusl, taken ghusl, and now you are drying yourself, and just fleetingly touched it with like that. So that is, they don't count it.
Yeah.
But a person has known that he has touched it, his private part, or his
Yeah. So even if you touch it accidentally with the palm, it will still break. But if it was, so accidentally with the palm breaks. But if it's not with the palm, it wouldn't break your wudu. And likewise the rear, we said touching the anus. And for a woman, again, sisters will know what we mean. But that immediate area from the front, if they touch that area with the palm, then their wudu for sisters is broken. And there were two different hadiths that were mentioned for the touching of the private area. The first man was told he doesn't have to make wudu, and the second man was told that he does. And that's an example in Usul al-Fiqh, where we have mansukh, nasikh and mansukh. Okay, we have that which abrogates and that which was abrogated. So the Shafi'is understood that the one who was told he doesn't have to make wudu, that hadith came earlier, right? And then the other hadith came later, and it's an example that the latter abrogated the former, and we now say the latter is the ruling we take. So there are examples in Sharia where abrogation can make things easier or more difficult. Okay, so that's an example of an abrogated rule that made something, an abrogation that made it more difficult. Before you didn't have to make wudu touching a private area, then you did. That becomes more difficult. But there are examples of when it becomes easier. So visiting the graves, for example, was prohibited. And there's a hadith that then permits it and says it's recommended for أَلَا فَزُورُوهَا. Now go and visit them. That's an example of making things easier. Okay, so abrogation can make things more difficult or easier. More difficult or easier. So that's the third invalidator of wudu. The fourth and the final one in the Shafi'i school is touching a member of the opposite sex who's not a close relative, skin to skin. Okay, so a man touching a non-mahram. Okay, a non-mahram. Someone's on the train, for example, right, and they're 100% sure, they touched a woman by accident, that'll break their wudu. In the Shafi'i school, even your wife, touching your wife would break your wudu. Would break your wudu. Not a close female relative. So we have the 7 as mentioned in the Quran. Your mother. So mothers, daughters, sisters, aunties, maternal. So mothers, daughters, sisters, paternal aunties, maternal aunties, your nieces from your paternal, nieces from your maternal. That's 7. Okay, so there are 7 women. If you touched your mother, your sister, your auntie on either side, right, or your niece on either side, right, touching them would not break your wudu because they're considered a close female relative. Okay, and then we have the same 7 through rada'ah. Okay, so someone has taken a wet nurse when they're younger. Okay, so that woman is your mother. She's your mother. Her daughter is your sister, right? That woman, her sister, is your auntie. The same 7. Okay, and then we have 4 through marriage. We have 4 maharim through marriage. We have your mother-in-law. So you marry a woman, her mother. That's your mother. You can kiss her hand. You can see her without hijab. It's as if she's your mother. Then we have your daughter. No, sister-in-law is not mahram, not close family. No. Then we have your daughter-in-law. What does that mean? So if someone took a second wife, or they got divorced, they took a new wife, and that woman has a daughter, right? She becomes your daughter. So Zayd marries Zainab, right? And Zainab has a daughter called Aisha, right? That is now Zayd's daughter, as if it's his daughter. Likewise, if you marry your father, right, takes a wife. Your father takes a wife. That would be considered your sorry?
Second mom.
Yeah, your stepmother or mother-in-law. Yeah, mother-in-law. So touching them would not break your wudu. So sister-in-law isn't considered a close.
What about his son's wife?
Yes, that's the 4th. Thank you very much. The 4th is your son's wife. Thank you. The 4th, it slipped my mind. The 4th is your son's wife. So your son gets married, right? And his wife is now your daughter-in-law. Okay, so those 4 women don't break your wudu. Who do we say? We said mother-in-law, right? Your daughter-in-law, if you take a second wife. We said, what was the third one? What was it? So your father-in-law, your father takes a wife, that's your mother-in-law, and your son's wife. So those 4 women don't break your wudu. So we said 18. 7 through nasab, right? 7 through rada'ah, from having taken a wet nurse, and 4, 7, 14, and 4 through marriage. Now, then we have something called. So those women are like your immediate family members. You can see them. You can kiss their hand. You can so on and so forth, right? But then we have a different type of mahram, which is, so you weren't incorrect, Sufi. Apologies, Dr. Sufi. You were correct, but it's a different type of mahram. So sister-in-law is a mahram,
Because you can't marry her.
Exactly, ahsant, exactly. Because you can't marry her. So yes, you were correct. Your sister-in-law is your mahram, but it doesn't carry the same ruling as the former category. Why? Because you can't touch your sister-in-law. You can't see her without hijab, right? Because why? Because provided if you separated from your wife, you could marry her, right? So the second type of mahram is the principle's a bit complicated, but to make it simple is that any close relative to your wife, right? So a close female relative to her is considered your mahram. What does that mean? It means you can't you couldn't marry them while you're married to your wife, but you still can't touch them. You can't see them because they're not a close relative like your mother-in-law or your daughter-in-law. So touching a member of the opposite sex breaks your wudu, right? Now it's skin.
But not in Hanafi.
Yes, not with the Hanafi school. Yeah, so exactly, and we've mentioned this a few times. Not with the Hanafis. We mentioned the ayah of breaking wudu, right? Is that إِذَا لَمَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ. Okay, if you touch women, the ayah goes on to say, if you don't find water, you make a tayammum, right? That's the proof of for the Shafi'is that touching breaks, because the Shafi'i understood lamas to mean to touch, literally. The Malikis, they went with the consensus of the people of Medina. They said no, what it means is the touch with shahwa. Okay, so shahwa has to be present. Then the Hanafis went even further. They said no, what it means is intercourse, right? And that's an example of the three imams have difference of opinion. Sorry? Yeah, difference of opinion, and we all
just understanding.
Exactly, and they all have their own ijtihad, okay, and they all have a reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that ijtihad. We don't say one was wrong or one was right. We say that's how the Shafis understood it, Hanafis and Malikis, and all the imams have their rewards for their ijtihad. So in the Shafi'i school, it's touching it's skin to skin. What does that mean? It means nails are excluded. So let's say, for example, you touch your wife's nail, right? Or her hair, stroking her hair, or teeth, likewise, that wouldn't break one's wudu. So if your skin touched her hair, or her nail, or her teeth, that wouldn't break either of the wudu of either of you. Now, when we say opposite sex, for a man, the female has to be of an age which women are normally desired. What does that mean? It means, you go to your friend's house and his daughter's like 3 years old and she runs up to you and you say, oh my gosh, have I touched you? Yeah. No, of course not. This is a little girl. A person of sound disposition wouldn't desire her. Like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, you wouldn't desire her. So because of that, touching that young girl, or for a woman, that young boy, wouldn't break their wudu. It's only when a young girl reaches an age where it's it will be the person of a sound disposition would desire her, then touching her would break your wudu. And that isn't a specific age. Some women develop much younger, some maybe older. But if we see a young girl, for example, and it's, the scholars would say that if you desire her, then you're of a sound disposition, right? Touching her would break your wudu, but anything younger than that would not break your wudu. And that's any part of the skin. So when touching the private area, it's just the palm, okay? But when touching a woman, it's any skin to skin. And this is even we missed one thing, or missed a few things when we touching the private area. So going back to the previous one, when touching the private area, is even if it's a young boy or a young girl. So for example, you're changing your son, right? You're changing his nappy, touch his private area. Or your daughter, touch her private area when you're changing their nappy. Or someone's washing a dead body, right? Washing a dead body, they have wudu, they touch the private area. They shouldn't, of course. They should always have something. They should cover their hand. You shouldn't touch the private area of a dead person with your bare hand. But if that did happen, that would invalidate your wudu.
No, that's okay.
Okay, I thought you had a question.
Question is, of course, Hanafi has got one more which breaks the wudu.
Please mention it. Go on.
Bleeding, passing blood, which is not for the other malai.
Yeah. So
if there is blood, you lose blood which rolls down, then that breaks wudu.
Yeah, that doesn't with the chefs. That does with the Hanafis.
What about stroking a dog?
Sorry?
Stroking a dog or
Yeah, so
break?
no, so stroking a dog. So dogs are impure, right? With the Shafi'is and the Hanafis, not the Malikis. But effectively, what all you're doing, it's not, you shouldn't do it, of course, but all you're doing is touching an impurity. So if you were to touch, one shouldn't, but if someone did touch urine or feces or a dog, right, it doesn't break your wudu.
All that you do is go and wash your hand.
You have to go and wash your hand, because it doesn't invalidate the wudu. If someone said it does, then where's the dalil? Oh, it's unclean. I know it's unclean, but tell me why it breaks the wudu. There's nothing that indicates it does break wudu. The only exception when you don't have to wash yourself or wash your hands when touching impurity is if they're both dry. So let's say a young boy has or a young girl, for example, has a blanket that's been soiled, or it's got urine but it's dry. It's been there for days. Right? If anyone were to touch that blanket, provided their hands were dry and the blanket was dry, the impurity doesn't pass from one thing to the other. Why? Because there's a qaida, al-anjaf al-anjaf tahir bila khilaf. There's a consensus that when two dry things come together, there's no impurity doesn't pass between the two. So touching a dog, one shouldn't do it because it's impure. But if you did do it, then you just have to wash your hand. Now, in most cases, the dog will be dry, right? So it'll be okay. But if let's say a dog brushed past you, and it's dry, and you see, oh, it's dry, and you said that two dry things touching, there's no impurities passed, provided that there's nothing discernible now. Meaning, if you saw a dog pass you and you saw hair you'd have to brush it off, because now that's a discernible impurity characteristic you can see. You'd have to brush it off, but you wouldn't have to wash it, because the dog was dry when it touched you.
What about cats? Is it nothing?
So cats, yeah. So there's a principle that scholars say that the hair of an animal that isn't eaten is impure. Cats aren't eaten, therefore the hair of a cat is impure. However, a small amount is excused, right? So a small amount of cat hair or any other animal that's not eaten is excused because it's difficult to stay away from. There is another, to go even further, is that animals that are mounted, right? Like you take a mount like a horse or, so horses aren't eaten. Does that mean the hair of a horse is impure? It's impure, but it's excused because it will be very difficult to stay away.
Which means the horse are not halal for us.
Eating, I'd have to check that. I'd have to check that before I answer. Wallahu
As
a'lam.
far as I know, horse meat is halal, but it is not sort of encouraged, but horse meat is halal. That one that is prohibited is donkey meat.
Yeah,
Donkey
yeah.
meat is prohibited.
That's what my memory tells me, but I'd have to double check before I said definitively. But there's a difference between saying something's eaten and it shouldn't be eaten. So, sorry? Ajib. Yeah, so when I say something shouldn't be eaten, it's different from saying you can't eat it, right? Horse meat shouldn't be eaten, right? But that's different from saying it can't be eaten. But pigs can't be eaten, where sheep meat is, or cows are, that is eaten. So when I say shouldn't be eaten, yeah, that's a difference. Now, if one, so vomiting, does vomiting break it with the Hanafis?
If the person has minor degrees of vomiting, it's excused. But the mouth becomes full of the vomit, then that brings.
Yeah, so vomiting doesn't nullify the wudu with the Shafi'is. And if you're fasting, involuntary vomiting does not break wudu. So someone is overcome by vomiting, involuntary vomiting does not break your fast, right? Why? Because if it's out of your control. You just threw up, right? You couldn't stop it. That doesn't break your wudu. But if you caused it, you stuck your fingers down, right, and you vomited, that would break your fast.
Forced vomiting.
Sorry?
Forced vomiting. You forced to vomit yourself.
Exactly, precisely. Yeah. So if you made it happen, you can't say, oh no, that breaks your fast, because there was no need for that.
Someone has like a car sick or something like that, so he or she vomits and
No, that would be involuntary. Yeah, because they wouldn't even have to anticipate that I might get sick. No, if it happened, it happened. Yeah, that wouldn't. No, that wouldn't break your fast. No, that wouldn't break your fast. Now there's a few more things. So if one, this is the last thing we'll mention, unless there's any more questions. So if one is unsure, okay, I think we mentioned this previous actually. If you're unsure if you've got wudu, okay, you come to the mosque. Oh, should I? You came to the mosque. I definitely made wudu at 9 o'clock. But did I use the bathroom at 10? I don't know. So what's in your mind? You have a certainty about what? About wudu, and you now doubt losing it. Okay? You go back to the certainty. I definitely made wudu at 9. I'm not sure if I broke it at 10. You still have wudu. Why? Because you go back to what you are certain about. Now the opposite is also true. If you are, I definitely used the bathroom at 9 o'clock. Did I make wudu at 10? I don't know. That's an example where you go back to the certainty of what? That you definitely used the bathroom and you're not sure if you made wudu. So you return to what you are certain about. What you are certain about. Are there any more questions before we finish, inshallah? Any more questions? We ask Allah to bless us in this last portion of Sha'ban. The Nisf of Sha'ban is coming up. On the Nisf of Sha'ban, Allah gazes upon His whole creation and forgives everyone, except two people, the mushrik and the mushahin. The mushahin is the one who takes his Muslim brother as an enemy. So we ask Allah to distance us from taking our brothers as enemies. We ask Him to purify our hearts and illuminate our souls and allow us to prepare for this blessed month of Ramadan. For those who can fast these upcoming days, this fasting Nisf of Sha'ban is recommended, which is on Sunday, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah to gaze upon us and our hearts and our souls, and to bless us and our children, and to allow us to reach the blessed month of Ramadan in a state in which He's pleased with us, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.